be able to identify the question types really, really quickly. This should be less than 3 seconds. Okay, by now. And if you can't do this, if you can't do a question in less than 3 seconds, what I'm going to recommend you do is you print out one of the mock exams that we've had, or literally any ICAS paper or things like that, and then go through every single ICAS question and then label it yourself on like another piece of paper or on like a side or something, right? Where it's like you have like the question and it's like blah, 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 and the answers. Literally, don't even have the answers, just have like the question if you can. Actually, no, have the answers in there as well. So do the answers because the answers will also help you identify. And then on like the side or maybe even a different piece of paper, just have like geometry or like trig or Pythag, whatever like specific things that you think topics are. Like personally, I don't think Pythag is a separate topic. I think Pythag is just a part of trig, just because you can pretty much like do the same stuff and still get the answers. Even though there were high schoolers that were able to prove something that mathematicians didn't think was actually possible. I'm aware, right? But it's and if you don't know that story, basically there were some high schoolers that when they did things with trigonometry in school, they treated Pythagoras' theorem as its own separate thing. Like Pythag and trigonometry, if it was a Venn diagram, they didn't actually have any intersection with each other. There was none of that. So you could prove everything in trigonometry, but you can't use Pythag to prove it. And then you can prove everything in Pythagoras, but you can't use trigonometry to prove it. And that was like a bit of a conundrum for a lot of mathematicians. And a lot of mathematicians were like, no, it should be possible because both of them work. So surely it's fine. No one could come up with what the proof was that combined both of these fields together. Okay. So you couldn't use trig to prove Pythag, you couldn't use Pythag to prove trig formulas, which is a nightmare, right? And so some high schoolers were like, no, it doesn't sound right. Literally high schoolers, people your age, and they came up with a proof. And they actually were on the news and stuff a couple years ago. So some high schoolers, some people your age actually came up with a new mathematical proof for Pythagoras' theorem. And they were very, very famous for about a week, and then everyone forgot about them. So, you know, um, in my opinion, trig and Pythag are the same, but I understand if you don't want to say this. But basically, read a question, be able to identify exactly what that question is within 3 seconds. So write down on the side what it is. When you look at a question, set a little timer like 1, 2, 3. Do I know what the question style is? Yes, no. And then if you don't, that's when you need to remember that for next time. Okay. So keep doing that over and over and over again if you still are unable to identify what the question is in 3 seconds. Okay, really unconventional advice, but I think it's a really important hack to be able to do because if you know that you're not going to be able to do a question quickly, you will skip it. And when you skip it, you will save time for another question. Any questions? Cool. We all good? Awesome. All right, let's move on to the next thing that people asked about.